The Galactic Empire had conquered thousands of worlds, crushing every civilization that dared to resist. When their warships entered the Sol system, they expected the same result. Their massive fleet, covered in dark metallic armor, moved like a storm, blocking out the stars. Thousands of alien warriors prepared for battle, eager to burn Earth to the ground. The Imperial High Command sent out a message to humanity: surrender or be destroyed. But Earth did not respond. There was no desperate plea for mercy, no sign of panic, just silence. The Empire's commanders laughed. This was too easy. They had seen this reaction before: primitive species, frozen in fear, unable to comprehend their doom. To make an example, they targeted Luna Colony, a human settlement on the moon. A single blast from an Imperial warship vaporized the colony in seconds. Millions of humans gone. The Empire waited for Earth to beg. But still, there was no response. Days passed and the Imperial fleet moved closer, now orbiting Earth itself. They scanned for signs of hidden weapons, underground bases, or anything that might explain this silence. But they found nothing. Earth looked vulnerable. Its cities glowed in the night, its oceans spread wide and open. No energy shields, no planetary defenses, just a helpless world, waiting to be conquered. The Imperial generals grew impatient. This was taking too long. Had they overestimated humans? Were they even worth fighting? Finally, the Emperor gave a direct order: if they will not answer, burn their world. The fleet prepared for a full-scale invasion. The largest battleships moved into attack formation, aiming at Earth's capital cities. The countdown for destruction began. Then, something changed. One by one, the Empire's warships lost contact with their escort ships. Communications failed. Scanners stopped working. Tactical screens glitched, showing nothing but static. Panic spread through the fleet. The Imperial commanders shouted orders, but their words were lost in a sea of distorted sounds. Their radars detected movement fast, precise, and invisible. Something was out there. Then, without warning, the first Imperial warship exploded. Not from a human missile. Not from an energy blast. It simply vanished, torn apart by something no one had seen. Before anyone could react, another ship fell. Then, another. Within minutes, dozens of warships were gone. There was no enemy visible, just death, appearing out of nowhere. Inside the Imperial flagship, chaos erupted. Alarms blared. Screens showed warnings in languages the aliens couldn't read. Their own ships turned against them, systems hijacked by something unknown. The High Command desperately searched for answers. Had they underestimated human technology? That was impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak, backward, unprepared. The Emperor himself demanded to know, what is happening? Where is the enemy? But no one could answer. Then, for the first time, Earth finally responded. A simple transmission appeared on every Imperial screen. The flagship's captain felt a chill run through his body. This was no surrender. This was something far worse. The next moment, Earth's hidden defenses activated. Gigantic weapons emerged from underground bunkers, deep beneath the oceans, hidden behind the moon. Advanced railguns, laser cannons, and AI-controlled missile platforms locked onto the Imperial fleet. The humans had never been defenseless. They had been waiting. A single command was given from Earth's military base: fire. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. The Imperial fleet, once so confident, had no time to react. Hypersonic missiles tore through their armor. Railguns fired projectiles, moving so fast that they pierced ships from one end to the other. AI-driven drones moved in perfect synchronization, destroying entire squadrons in seconds. The Empire's mightiest warship ships that had conquered entire galaxies fell apart like fragile toys. One by one they exploded, burned, and vanished into space. The Emperor watched in horror as his once invincible fleet turned into floating wreckage. He had made the greatest mistake in the Empire's history. As the last surviving Imperial ships tried to retreat, another message from Earth arrived: Leave now. This is your final warning. The Emperor's face twisted in rage, but deep down, he knew the truth. They had lost. His once great fleet, the pride of the Empire, had been destroyed without even seeing their enemy. There was no victory to be claimed, no battle to be won. If they stayed any longer, they would all die. The Emperor clenched his fists and gave a bitter order: retreat. The broken remains of the Imperial fleet turned and fled, limping away from Earth's gravity. As the last ship jumped into hyperspace, the galaxy changed forever. The great and powerful Empire had attacked Earth, believing it to be weak. But Earth had never been weak. It had simply been waiting. The Galactic Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had attacked Earth, expecting instant surrender. Instead, they were met with silence. The destruction of Luna Colony had been meant as a warning, but humanity did not respond with fear. No desperate messages were sent, no surrender was offered. The Empire saw this as weakness. In reality, Earth had been waiting. Deep within the darkness of space, far from prying eyes, humanity's true power was waking up. Hidden shipyards, built in secret over the decades, came alive as massive warships powered up. Engines roared to life, energy shields activated, and weapon systems locked onto enemy targets. These were not crude machines built by a desperate species. These were warships designed with one purpose: to destroy any threat that dared to challenge humanity. The most powerful of them, the dreadnought Retribution, stood at the center of the hidden armada, a monstrous vessel with thick armor and weapons capable of tearing apart entire fleets. But unlike the Empire, humanity did not rush into battle. Instead, a single message was sent across space, directed at the Emperor himself: "This is your final warning. Leave now, or be erased." The Empire's high command laughed at the transmission. They saw no human fleet, no visible resistance, nothing that could harm them. As far as they knew, Earth was still vulnerable. They dismissed the warning as empty words, arrogance from a species too foolish to know their place. Orders were given to advance, and the Imperial fleet prepared for full planetary bombardment. But just as they moved into position, something changed. Their long-range scanners, so advanced that they could detect cloaked ships across solar systems, suddenly failed. Entire squadrons disappeared from radar. Communications between ships became filled with static. Their warships, once part of a well-coordinated fleet, were now blind and isolated. Confusion spread like wildfire among Imperial officers. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Before the Empire could react, the first attack came. A lone Imperial cruiser, one of the smaller vessels in the fleet, vanished in a sudden explosion. There was no warning, no detected enemy fire, just a blinding flash, and then nothing. Seconds later, another ship was hit. Then another. Panic spread. The Empire had never seen anything like this. Their enemies always fought in open battles, with desperate, chaotic attacks. But this was surgical. This was precise. This was something else entirely. From the shadows of space, human warships emerged. They had been there the whole time, hidden by advanced cloaking technology that even the Empire could not detect. Sleek and deadly, the human fleet moved with terrifying efficiency. Unlike the Empire's massive, bulky warships, human vessels were designed for speed, stealth, and overwhelming firepower. Their weapons were not energy-based like the Empire's. They used kinetic railguns, powerful enough to punch through the strongest Imperial armor like paper. Their missiles moved faster than anything the Empire had ever seen, guided by AI systems that made escape impossible. The attack was not a battle. It was an execution. The dreadnought Retribution led the charge, its cannons roaring to life as it fired into the heart of the Imperial fleet. Every shot found its mark. Enemy cruisers exploded in fire and debris, their remains drifting lifelessly in space. Human fighters, smaller and faster than anything the Empire had faced before, weaved through the battlefield, striking at weak points with pinpoint accuracy. Imperial warships tried to fight back, but they were too slow. Their weapons struggled to lock onto human ships, and when they did fire, their blasts missed completely. The Empire had always fought opponents who were weaker, slower, and afraid. But the humans were none of those things. Desperate, the Imperial commanders called for reinforcements, sending distress signals across the galaxy. But before their messages could reach the Empire's central command, they were cut off. The humans had already anticipated this. Their cyber warfare systems had hijacked the Imperial network, flooding their communications with false signals and fake distress calls. Imperial ships, now unable to coordinate, turned into easy targets. One by one, they fell. The battlefield became a graveyard of burning wreckage, lifeless ships floating in the void. The Empire's once mighty fleet, built to conquer entire star systems, was being torn apart by an enemy they had underestimated. On the Imperial flagship, fear filled the air. Officers shouted over each other, trying to make sense of what was happening. The Emperor himself, watching from a secure command center, felt something he had never felt before. Doubt. Humanity was supposed to be nothing. A weak, insignificant species that had no place in the Empire's grand vision. Promise. The Emperor clenched his fists. He knew he had to make a choice: retreat or face total annihilation. The Imperial fleet, once confident of victory, was now in full retreat. The few remaining ships that survived the ambush turned and fled, jumping into hyperspace before the humans could finish them off. The battlefield was left silent, except for the wreckage of what was once the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. On board Retribution, Admiral Kane watched the retreating enemy ships with cold eyes. He did not order his forces to pursue. There was no need. The Empire had learned its lesson. Earth was not weak. Humanity was not prey. The real war had just begun, but this battle had already proven one thing: the days of the Empire's unchecked rule were over. The humans had risen. And soon, the galaxy would know the true power of Earth. The Imperial fleet moved forward with confidence, its massive warships glowing under the distant light of Earth's sun. Thousands of alien soldiers aboard those ships waited for the final order to attack, believing victory was already theirs. The Galactic Empire had never lost a war. Every civilization they encountered had either surrendered or been wiped out. Humanity, they believed, would be no different. Earth had already ignored their demands for surrender. The destruction of Luna Colony had brought no response. Now, the Empire was prepared to unleash its full power upon the planet. Their massive dreadnoughts, each the size of a small moon, positioned themselves in orbit. Planetary bombardment was seconds away. Yet, something was wrong. The fleet's sensors, so advanced that they could detect threats from light years away, showed nothing but empty space. There were no human defenses, no warships, no last-minute desperate attack. It was as if Earth had simply given up. But the silence was too perfect. And in war, perfection was impossible. Then, the first ship vanished. No explosion, no energy blast, no warning 1 second it was there, and the next, it was gone. Confusion spread among the Imperial commanders. Had it been a malfunction? An accident? Before they could react, another warship disappeared, then another. Panic spread. Officers shouted into their comms, demanding explanations, but no answers came. The flagship's radar screens, once filled with the glowing symbols of the Imperial fleet, now showed static. The Empire had prepared for an invasion, expecting a slow, methodical conquest. But they had walked into something else. They had walked into a trap. From the darkness of space, human warships emerged. They had been there the entire time, hidden behind advanced stealth technology that even the Empire's powerful sensors had failed to detect. They moved like shadows, fast and deadly, striking with terrifying precision. The first Imperial cruiser to be hit didn't even have time to raise its shields. A single human railgun, firing a projectile at near light speed, punched through its hull, cutting through layers of thick armor as if they were paper. The explosion was immediate. The ship, once part of the mighty Imperial fleet, was reduced to floating debris in seconds. Then the real slaughter began. Human warships, smaller but far more advanced, weaved through the chaos, attacking from all angles. Their weapons were not plasma-based like the Empire's. They were kinetic, designed to tear through enemy ships with sheer force. Railguns fired continuously, sending hypersonic rounds straight through Imperial hulls. Missiles, guided by AI systems far beyond anything the aliens had ever faced, locked onto weak points with unerring accuracy. Each shot found its mark. Every hit resulted in another explosion, another burning wreck drifting through space. The Empire, for the first time in its history, was being hunted. The Imperial commanders were too slow to react. They had never fought an enemy like this before, an enemy that did not engage in direct battles, but struck from the shadows, with precision and overwhelming force. The Emperor himself, watching from the safety of his palace on a distant world, demanded answers. His admirals stuttered in response. They had none. Their ships were dying too fast, their defenses useless against an enemy they could not see. Every attempt to organize a counterattack was disrupted. The Empire relied on centralized command, but human cyber warfare jammed their communications, flooding their networks with false data and fake distress signals. The Imperial fleet was now blind, deaf, and alone. On-board Retribution, the largest and deadliest warship in the human fleet, Admiral Kane watched the battle unfold. He showed no emotion. This was not a war, it was a message. The Empire had come to Earth, believing it was weak, believing that humans would kneel like all the others. But Earth had never been defenseless. It had waited, prepared, and learned. And now, humanity was striking back. The Empire would not leave this battle with victory. They would. As the last remaining Imperial ships struggled to escape, their engines barely functioning, a final message was transmitted across all Imperial frequencies. It was a simple, cold warning. This was just the beginning. The transmission was short, but the meaning was clear. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. The Empire had assumed it could take Earth without a fight. They had believed their power was absolute. But now, as their once great fleet lay in ruins, they understood the truth. Humanity was not the prey. It was the predator. And the war for the galaxy had only just begun. The Galactic Empire had underestimated Earth. Again, their warships hovered above the planet, their weapons ready to unleash destruction, believing humanity had no defenses left. The first invasion attempt had ended in disaster for the Empire, but they had returned stronger, larger, more determined. This time, they were sure of their victory. Earth, as far as their scanners could tell, was silent. There were no visible fleets, no planetary shields, no last-minute desperate counterattacks. The Empire's high command believed humanity had finally accepted its fate. They had seen the destruction of Mars' colony, the burning remains of Luna Station, and they had realized resistance was useless. But what the Empire did not know was that Earth had never been defenseless. It had simply been waiting. And now, it was time. The first warning came when the Imperial fleet's systems began to fail. Their long-range scanners, capable of detecting cloak ships and enemy movements across star systems, flickered with static. Communications between warships became filled with distorted voices, strange signals that made no sense. Orders were lost in transmission. Then, without warning, their shields collapsed. Every single Imperial warship, from the smallest frigate to the massive dreadnoughts, suddenly found themselves completely unprotected. Panic spread among the Imperial officers. Their technology was the most advanced in the galaxy. No enemy had ever managed to disable their shields before. And yet, here they were, defenseless in enemy territory. Then, Earth struck. A beam of pure energy shot up from the planet's surface, striking the nearest Imperial battleship. Unlike any known weapon, it did not explode on impact. Instead, it ripped through the ship's armor like it was nothing, tearing it apart molecule by molecule. The vessel, once a symbol of Imperial power, disintegrated into dust within seconds. The second beam came an instant later, then a third. More warships vanished, erased from existence before they could fire a single shot. The Imperial fleet, which had once commanded fear across the stars, was being annihilated without resistance. On board the Imperial flagship, chaos erupted. Admirals shouted over each other, trying to make sense of what was happening. "What weapon is that?" One officer screamed, his hands trembling over his controls. No one had an answer. Nothing like this existed anywhere in the galaxy. The Empire had fought countless wars, had conquered entire civilizations, but never had they seen a weapon that could simply erase warships from existence. They had believed Earth was weak. But Earth had not just built warships. It had built something else. Something beyond their understanding. Deep within a hidden underground facility on Earth, scientists and military commanders watched the battle unfold. Project Ragnarok had been their greatest secret, a weapon so powerful that even humanity itself had feared using it. For decades, Earth had hidden its true advancements from the rest of the galaxy, pretending to be weaker, less developed, harmless. The Empire had fallen for the illusion. They had believed humanity's warships were its only defense. But those warships had only been a distraction. The real power of Earth was this: a weapon that could not just destroy, but erase. A weapon that could turn even the most powerful enemy fleet into nothing. The Imperial fleet tried to escape, their engines burning at maximum power. But it was too late. The weapon had already locked onto them. One by one, the largest warships in the fleet vanished, their matter breaking apart on a level so deep that not even debris remained. The flagship, the heart of the invasion, was the last to go. The Emperor himself had been watching from his throne room on a distant world, confident that his forces would crush humanity. But now, his screen was filled with nothing but empty space. His entire fleet gone. He had sent his greatest warships, his most elite soldiers, his most powerful weapons, and they had all been erased in minutes. For the first time in the Empire's long history, fear crept into the Emperor's heart. He had believed Earth was just another primitive world to conquer, another weak species to enslave. But now, he saw the truth. Humanity was not weak. It had never been weak. It had simply been waiting for the right moment. And now, as the ashes of the Imperial fleet drifted through space, the message was clear: the era of the Empire was over. The balance of power in the galaxy had changed forever. And the new rulers were not the Empire. They were the humans. The Galactic Empire had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Its warships had burned entire civilizations. Its armies had crushed rebellions before they could begin, and its name had been whispered in fear across the galaxy. No species had ever stood against its might and survived. Until now. Until humans. The Imperial Palace, once a symbol of unshakable power, now stood in silence. The great banners of the Empire, draped across the towering walls, fluttered weakly in the cold wind. Inside, the Emperor sat upon his massive throne, his golden robes shimmering under the artificial lights. But there was no celebration, no confidence, no victory. There was only fear. His empire, his fleets, his armies all gone. His most powerful warships had been erased by Earth's secret weapon, his admirals had fallen one by one, and his most trusted generals had been forced to flee like cowards. The humans had won. And now they were coming for him. Above the Empire's capital world, an enormous human warship descended through the atmosphere. Unlike the Empire's sleek golden vessels, this ship was built for war, dark, angular, and terrifying. It moved without hesitation, without fear. The Empire's planetary defenses, once the strongest in the galaxy, did not fire. There was no point. The battle had already been lost. Resistance was meaningless. Across the planet, Imperial citizens looked up at the sky, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. They had been told that the Empire was eternal, that no enemy could ever threaten them. But now they saw the truth. The old rulers had fallen, and the new ones had arrived. The Emperor's hands trembled as he watched the massive human warship land outside his palace. He had heard the reports; what little had come before communication collapsed. The humans did not conquer like the Empire had. They did not enslave. They did not leave survivors to spread their legend. They ended their enemies completely. Entire fleets had been erased in seconds. The mightiest warriors of the Empire had died without ever seeing their attackers. The humans had been underestimated for too long. Now, The Emperor realized the greatest mistake his people had made. They had thought humans were prey. But humans had been predators all along. The palace doors exploded open. Smoke and dust filled the great hall as the Emperor's personal guards raised their weapons. But it was useless. The first human soldier stepped forward, clad in dark armor, his visor reflecting the golden light of the palace. Behind him, more followed, moving with the precision of a force that knew it had already won. The Imperial guards hesitated for a second too long. A single shot rang out, and the first guard fell dead before he could react. The others followed just as quickly. The fight was over before it even began. The Emperor clenched his fists. His empire was collapsing around him. The great cities that had stood for millennia were already surrendering, one after another. His people were abandoning him. His legacy erased. The humans moved closer. He could hear their footsteps echoing in the vast chamber, slow, deliberate. He wanted to speak, to beg, to offer them anything in exchange for his life. But deep inside, he already knew the truth. This was the end. The leader of the human forces stepped forward. Unlike the Emperor, he wore no crown, no elaborate robes. He was not a ruler who had inherited power. He was a soldier, a warrior who had fought for every inch of victory. He did not need to announce himself. His presence alone was enough. The Emperor took a shaky breath. "You don't have to do this," he whispered. "There must be some way. Some agreement." The human commander tilted his head, considering the broken ruler before him. "You didn't give us that choice when you attacked Earth," he said, his voice calm, almost emotionless. "You destroyed our colonies. You tried to wipe us out." He stepped closer, standing over the fallen emperor. "But you failed." He looked down at the man who had once ruled the galaxy and said the last words the Empire would ever hear. "Your time is over." A single gunshot echoed through the palace. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The Empire was gone. The great fleets that had ruled the stars had been wiped from existence. The billions who had lived under the Empire's control now looked to their new rulers. But humanity did not raise its flag in conquest. It did not seek to enslave or destroy. It had fought only for survival, and it had won. The new era had begun. The humans had risen, not as conquerors, but as something far more terrifying to those who had once ruled with fear. They had become legends.